Hey folks, in this episode of Behind the Scene, I'm talking with celebrity photographer and director Michael Grecco. Hey folks, welcome back to Behind the Scene. This is a show where we look behind the scene from some of the most famous photographers and some regular old people that do great photography in the industry. Today, I get the chance to talk to my friend, Mr. Michael Grecco. He's down in Los Angeles, and he does some great work, as you'll see as we walk through this. We're going to get a look at Michael Grecco, how he got started, where he is now, and where he might be going in the future. Michael, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Thank you, Frederick. Thank you, your audience. Also, I'm so happy that they're all here and they're interested. And when you say behind the scenes, does that mean like under the desk to see if I'm wearing pants? Or... Yeah,
because we're all on lockdown now, so you will never know what I'm wearing behind the scene. It's always good to talk to you, man. Looking at your website, I have to make sure not to look at your website too much before I talk to you because I get intimidated by the work that's up there.
Oh, you're very sweet, Frederick.
No, it's good stuff. I'm going to bring up your site here while we're talking.
I swore we would never have to tell the story of how we first met again, but since this is totally a new show for you, I think we have to, right?
I think we have to. The day that will live in infamy when Frederick Van Johnson met the illustrious Michael Grecco. You want to tell it or shall I? You tell it and I'll fill in the blanks.
We were invited to a big, you were working for Adobe at the time, I believe.
Yeah.
And we were invited to a big Adobe dinner. I believe it was, what was the organization, the Pixel Genius or something?
Yeah, it was Pixel Genius.
So Jeff Shewy and Seth Resnick and that company, they had Pixel Genius. When in the day when you would make plugins for Photoshop because Photoshop didn't do the things that you needed it to do, right?
Correct.
Now, of course, it's all built into Photoshop. But I was finding a seat at this dinner, and I guess I had a white shirt and a black blazer on.
Yes, you did.
And you just looked at me and said, "Oh, waiter, can I have a knife, please?"
No, it was a fork. Okay, it was a fork. And in my defense, I had never met you before. I knew the name, but I'd never seen you in person. And the wait staff that was there were all dressed in black slacks and white shirts. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm sitting at the table. Everybody else had silverware. I'm like, where's my silverware? Come on. So you walk by, all casual and approachable. And I'm like, hey, can I get a fork?
and then I think someone looked at you and goes, "That's Michael Grecco. He's not a waiter."
I forget who said that, but I was like, oh my God. And this was like a decade plus ago, right? And I've spent the entire time since then apologizing and eating crow. So it was great.
Like I said, I swore not to do it on your regular show anymore because these wonderful listeners have probably heard it before. But now that you have this, this new gig, I think that, I think we need to start off right. So
Absolutely. Well, here we go. So once again, I'm sorry, waiter. And you got a fork over there I can borrow? No, that was great. But we, at the very least, we got a good story out of it. So that was perfect.
Do you think they'll kill the expo?
Yeah. I don't think, just for folks that are listening to this in the future, who knows what the future may hold, but we are smack dab in the global pandemic that is the coronavirus right now. And the entire world is on lockdown, and a lot of events, most, if not all events, have been canceled or postponed. So yeah, I think so. I think a lot of events like NAB, for example, has shifted to online. So they're calling it NAB Express for this round, and we don't know what the next year may hold, but at least they're still doing some semblance of a conference.
Yeah, I'm curious just because they Emerald closed Photo District News, and I knew that companies like Sony had moved off-site for the show. So I'm just wondering, with people just not attending conventions like that at the same level as they used to,
Yeah, I think it's gonna trigger and force evolution, right? Because even when the restrictions are lifted, I think there's still, myself included, going to be a large contingent of people that think twice about traveling. And like, does it make sense for me to go there, or can I get that information online? Right. So the organizations that power those types of events are going to have to pivot accordingly, I think. So. It's a brave new world. So, what I want to talk to you about, though, in this interview is I want to introduce you to the audience, to the behind the scene audience, and I want to get a look at what you do, right? So you're a director and a photographer. And you've photographed some of the most famous names in the entertainment industry. So tell me how you got started in that. Like, where did the genesis of you moving into the world of celebrity photography, how did that happen?
Well, I started as a photojournalist. I went to Boston University in the School of Communications. My major was actually broadcasting and film, but my minor was photojournalism, and I took a photojournalism course with a renowned photojournalism teacher, and then started interning for the Associated Press. So, my heart was always in more creative, artistic photography, but I thought photojournalism would be cool. So I started working for the Associated Press, and if I say dates, it'll
Just say a while ago.
A while ago. And a couple of years later, I started working for a small photo agency called Picture Group. And I was also shooting music at night in Boston. And then in the early 80s, I became a staff photographer at the Boston Herald. Cool. So they hired me, and I was there for about 4 or 5 years and had done really, really well on 2 shoots, the Maria Shriver wedding and the Carolyn Kennedy wedding, and outshot 2 photographers for People magazine. And where I don't know if it's outshot. I had pictures that they didn't have. And the People magazine basically offered me a job. They had to buy work from me when they had 2 photographers there covering the event. And, they came to me and was like, look, if you ever leave the Herald, we'll give you a job. And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to leave the Herald tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm walking out the door.
Yeah, I'm leaving now. Bye.
That's awesome.
I mean, let's see. A tabloid Daily Metropolitan in Boston or People magazine. So
Right. Yeah, that's a step up.
So I moved to Los Angeles and did photojournalism for about 5 years. A lot of people forget, they know the celebrity portrait work, but they forget that I had almost a 13-year career as a photojournalist before I started doing celebrity portraiture. So it was sort of a tangential shift. Like, I didn't assist. A lot of our audience, I'm sure, are, wondering ways of entry into the business. A good way is assisting. I didn't assist. So I had to teach myself all of the technical and lighting stuff because I wasn't on set with anyone else. I'm sort of self-taught. But after a number of years of doing photojournalism, I just decided it wasn't creative enough for me. Just wasn't what I wanted to do.
You wanted more control probably over, was it that? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Was it you wanted more control over what you were putting on film or the sensor, or would you just wanted more person-to-person interaction? I
wanted to make shit up. I wanted to tell a story. I wanted to use lights and sets and props and when you're a photojournalist, you're taught the who, what, when, where, and why, which are the 5 W's of photojournalism, and each element is supposed to go in the picture. Like, if you have all the elements, usually the date and the why are told in the caption, but the who, what, where is really good to have in the picture, right? If you're photographing someone, you want them in the photograph. So, you're taught to put elements together, and in a still picture, you're taught to put them, for the most part, all in one photograph. Of course, there were, picture stories where you can take, 10, 20, whatever it is, pictures and tell a story, great photojournalistic picture stories and tell a story through multiple pictures. But I was taught to try to put those elements into an image, and I just found it very base. I found it very literal. I found it, I wasn't an artsy documentary photographer, a Eugene Richards, or I was working for a newspaper, and the language was very obvious, right? It was very, Joe with Joe's shoes, put Joe in front of Joe's store with the sign that says Joe's shoes holding a shoe.
Commodity. Yeah.
Right. And I wanted to build a shoe and have Joe sitting in it. Like I wanted to translate my work from newspapers essentially to magazines, to shoot more lyrical, more expressionistic, more humorous, more crafted work. And I've always loved portraiture. When I learned photography in high school, my thing was to shoot friends and do portraits. So
yeah, what is it about portraiture? I want to talk about that piece of it. Just, I love portraiture as well, and I think everyone has different reasons for liking different genres. My reason is I like to capture people at a certain point in their lives and make them hopefully look the best that they have looked, right? So that next year or the year after or whatever, there's that record of that snapshot in time. What's your motivation for shooting people?
Well, I just have it's like a document of your friends and people you know, and I'm not always worried about how well they look. I'm more interested in telling the story and connecting and finding an emotional moment. So, but there was a conscious decision. Annie Leibovitz, whose work influenced my early career for sure, was just becoming popular. Her first book came out in the early 80s. People were looking at Rolling Stone to see in the early 80s her work. And I wanted, there was a conscious decision that if I shot celebrities, the images would also have an importance. The trick then is to make important pictures of important people.
Right.
And I think, I've been fortunate enough to have done that. I've done 2 or 3 pictures that have been used as the posters and lead pictures, like the Mel Brooks documentary on PBS and the Chris Farley documentary, where they picked images I shot as sort of the seminal remembrance or celebration of someone like Mel Brooks. So, I realized that I couldn't just take a portrait of someone important. I had to take a great picture, or try to take a great picture of someone important.
Yeah. And how does that work? A lot of photographers will say, they'll look at celebrity photography and they'll say, yeah, I could do that if I knew Mel Brooks or if I knew Will Smith or whatever, I could get that shot. Tell me what your retort to that is when people say, your work is great, but I could have shot that if I put it on auto and I had the access to those celebrities. What's the response to that?
Well, I think if you look at my work, it tells a story. So you either, it's either in the lighting, or it's in a set, or it's a concept that someone's trying to portray. And like, keep in mind, I don't know these people. My work was decent enough that I would get hired by Time Magazine, Entertainment Weekly, the major magazines to photograph them. And they were the arbiters of me doing creative work and doing interesting work. And they were the ones who picked me to shoot the celebrity. I didn't know this Will Ferrell before I shot him the first time,
Yeah.
So, and a lot of these people I've shot, 2 and 3 times. Mel Brooks 2 times, Rene Russo 2 or 3 times, 3 times, Spielberg 3 times.
Is it sort of an in crowd once you shoot these folks one time, they're like, you know what, I will only be photographed by Michael Grecco because I know
I mean, some people, and again, maybe our audience thinks that's the way it is. I mean, I had a relationship with Danica McKellar, who was Winnie Cooper on The Wonder Years. Lovely, lovely, amazing actress and person, great human being, very smart. And I photographed her for Calabasas magazine. And in photographing her for Calabasas magazine, we then clicked. And then I did the cover of every one of her math books. So that happens sometimes, but in the coronavirus days now, I'm catching up. I'm watching the whole series of Downton Abbey.
Oh yeah, I have to start watching that. I haven't watched any of it.
Okay, so if you're Lord Grantham, you're not going to really hang out with the servants. Like you're Will Smith. He has a different life. It's not then all of a sudden I shoot him one day and we're buddies hanging out. I mean, it works for some people, and it works for, I guess, single people who can catch the eye of a celebrity and go out and have drinks and hang out. And but I'm not social. I don't socialize with that. But
does it work like, for example, if it's a restaurant that I know, and I know the quality of their work, I know the service and the ambiance, and I like that. Is it sort of akin to that where, an art director or whomever is hiring you says, you know what, Michael Grecco, we know his look, we need his look for this campaign, let's get Grecco, or let's go get other XYZ photographer that has this, a different look. Do they search by look or do they search by name?
I think that there's 2 things that happen. Is the client, either the advertising agency or the, because I've done some celebrity-based advertisements also, besides just regular commercial, pharmaceutical things where you're using models, or car shoots where you're using a model. But in the celebrity realm, the client picks you based on the work, and then the publicist has to approve you. So you need a good relationship with all the publicists. So that's really, it's not the celebrity that even knows about it. It's the publicist. I mean, it's possible that the publicist is, reviewing people and showing the celebrity who the choices are. I guess it depends on how much input the celebrity gets. But keep in mind, it's like the publicists are the gatekeeper to the celebrity. So, they usually, a magazine will usually give them a list of people that they want, and you then have to make it through the gatekeeper to get the shoot.
It sounds like other photography professions, like wedding photography. They gotta be in good with the wedding planner and the all those other connected industries around the wedding. Like similarly, I'm wondering, like in wedding photography, the photographer will often give the planner or the the caterer or whatever, people that can refer work to them, they'll give them prints to sort of get in good with them. Is there any sort of relationship building like that in the celebrity photography world where you gotta, be nice to the publicist and send them a Starbucks gift card or something?
Yeah.
Like how do you grease the wheels?
If it's editorial, you gotta be careful about being ethical. Mm-hmm. And, there was a famous photographer in the 80s and 90s, Firuz Zahidi. I have no idea what's happened to him. Haven't heard his name. But, I remember stories about where before he handed in stuff to the magazine, he allowed the publicist to pick all the pictures. And it made the news. Like these news, and it got him in good with the publicist, but it was at the time when magazines and news outlets had power, they had this they had this strong ethical notion that they get to see it, they get to print what they want. If they didn't give, most of them tried not to give publicist approval because the most interesting pictures weren't the ones the publicist were going to pick, right? And that doesn't mean they're derogatory in any way. That just means that they're the most interesting image. Like the publicist will have this view that they want their subject looking glamorous, and the magazine might want, an off moment or something that's funny or something
more real,
kilter, or something that's jarring but not ugly. But they come from different perspectives when they edit a take. And when we say edit a take, audience, we're not talking about Photoshop. Edit take means picking pictures.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. So all right, switching gears a little bit. So talking to the photographer that's looking at you and they want to be, in the world that you live in. They aspire to shoot celebrities and they want to start by, I'm sure as you mentioned on previous interviews, shooting people around them, like their friends and family, and sort of, practicing there. How, if they're doing that, if Joe photographer here wants to aspire to live in your house and shoot the people that you're shooting, if they want to do that and they're starting with friends and family, should they treat that friend and family like a celebrity and go through the whole 9 yards and the whole flow of what you would do with a regular person? I
mean, a lot of the stuff I've done is with sets and props and maybe. I always think when you do that with family portraiture, it could look hokey too. That's the thing. The last thing I want to do in a picture is have it look hokey. And if I'm shooting a comedian, it should look comedic, but not hokey. So
define hokey though. What is hokey?
Well, hokey is when you dress someone up just to dress them up, and there's no correlation. You're going to go buy a period costume and dress your cousin up in them, but she's a 20-year-old that has no correlation to this period It's like concepts are good when they really tell a story of who the person is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how does a concept come to be in the celebrity world? I would assume it mostly comes from the publicist or the client, or is it collaborative between you two and you guys come up with it together? How does that work?
So the normal way is it's the editor and I, either the picture editor or art director, or sometimes the word editor, depending on the structure of the magazine. We go through the concept, and then the publicist usually has to approve the concept. I mean, I remember doing the Twister cover for Entertainment Weekly, and I was told by Stephen Huvane, who was Helen Hunt's publicist at the time, that Helen didn't like Bill Paxton, or he told the picture editor, Alice Babcock, at the time at Entertainment Weekly. So I was told possibly they would come together for 20 minutes to do when the movie, the first Twister came out, they would come together and shoot together, but we should shoot them on white and make sure that we would shoot them on white and make sure that, I had enough to put two people together in Photoshop to retouch or composite, not edit, to retouch or composite them together. So I shot them both separately. We had this 20 minutes, and I wanted to get the concept approved. I wanted them both like on a wire with a big wind machine off their feet blowing.
Yeah.
And I was told by Stephen Huvane, Helen's publicist, Helen is not a physical actress. And I'm like, what is she, ethereal? Like, I'm thinking, is she a ghost? Is she like, am I not going to see her?
Mental actress? Like, what is it?
Obviously, he didn't want to exert his client
she doesn't do her own stunts, right?
Put her on a wire. It would have been great. It would have been great. We hired like one of those mofo huge wind machines, like the ones that are like 6 feet across wind machine, you know.
Nice.
But we made it work. It was a great cover still, but it's just funny. The publicists are for sure the ones you get all creative with the magazine and your picture editor or creative director, and then you have to run it by the gatekeeper. So, and most of them are reasonable and fabulous. I actually like Stephen Huvane a great deal. He's a straight shooter. I'm sure it's just wasn't something, you know, he knew his client well that would, you know, she wouldn't be into. So.
Yeah. Well, you got to know your client and got to keep the client happy, because I don't do my own stunts. I'm just saying, you know, I refuse. That's extra money for me to do stunts. You know, switching gears, Michael, a little bit. I want to talk about the software and the sort of that side of the world. Talk about that. Like, once the shoot is over, you know, you've got all the images on hard drive or memory cards, etc. What happens then? Like, are you doing the work retouching? Are you sending them out? Do you have a team that handles that? How does that flow work?
Well, when we switched from film to digital, I had the attitude that I never wanted to be the lab, that there's no reason for me to be the lab. I was better off spent running my business, calling clients, doing sales, than being the lab.
Yeah.
And really, all I'm doing is putting the final curves on final pictures or directing the retoucher, but I don't process, I don't retouch, I don't composite, I don't do any of it. So
okay,
we're usually tethered. You know, we calibrate our monitor with our X-Rite device, and we're in the studio. We're tethered to the laptop or to an iMac, and we're shooting tethered, and that way I can judge the lighting. I can see, you know, remember that raw file is supposed to be you know, between the goalposts, right? You're supposed to be between the ends of the histogram, right? So that you're not clipping any data. So we make sure it's lit in a manner that everything is there and everything is, you know, on the file, but it still looks the way you want it to look. We don't flatten a file just to flatten a file. We, you know, my work is known for its drama and its contrast, and then we process our images. It depends on how much I trust a picture editor or art director, or if I don't trust them or don't know them very well, I'll send them a small take. I'll send them just anywhere from 20 to 50 images. Let's say we shot 750, 20 or 50 images from a shoot. If I trust them, I'll edit out the stuff. I'll do the opposite. I'll edit out the stuff that I wouldn't ever want to see printed or don't want them to see.
And then I'll send them the bulk.
I'll send them the take. But they're low res. They're 1200s. They're 1200 pixels on the longest side. So then they have to ask us for a finished file.
Okay. So then on the shoot day, you're in the studio and you're actually clicking the shutter button and tethered. They're not looking at the display and saying, yeah, I like that, but have her turn to the left a little bit, or could you put some wind on her? I want her hair a little bit more flowy.
Well, I mean, they are looking at the display. They are looking at this display. Realize though, I'm shooting often for magazines that they're based in New York and no one's there. Even if it's a cover, you know, a couple of years ago, the Sports Illustrated cover of Will Smith, even if that's a cover, it's no one from the magazine was there. It's like you're on your own, you know?
Yeah, but that's because they trust you, right?
What's that?
That's because they trust you. They've worked with you before.
That's
if you
true.
were a brand new photographer, they might want to have some adult supervision there, right?
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
But I try to encourage, if there's a client on set, to give me instructions, not tell the subject or model what to do, because it breaks up the pacing. It just changes. If they're giving the model instructions or subject instructions, and I am, it screws everything up. So I try to encourage them to either stand next to me and give me subtle feedback, or wait until we, you know, because we'll shoot a dozen pictures or 20 and then look at them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then the other thing that's really, really important is there are not 20 people on the client side giving me feedback. Like,
Ooh, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, they have to filter it to one person. Like, there's got to be someone in charge of me.
Yeah. Yeah. How does that go? Are these shoots typically multi-day, or is it just one day and you got to get in and get the shot? And
I mean, like,
I can imagine anarchy in there, especially with, 20 different opinions, even if they're filtered through one person, it could get hectic. Have you ever had a situation where it got out of hand like that?
Yeah. I mean, I remember I did the original gallery for Fox for the Martin Lawrence show. And everyone had a publicist. Martin had a publicist. I forget his wife on the show, Trisha.
Gina.
Yeah, but isn't the actress's name Trisha?
Oh, I forgot her name. Yeah, I have her picture in my head.
She was totally sexy. She was like, so the picture of this, half of the talent had a publicist.
Yeah.
Then the show had a publicist, like the producers had a publicist, and then Fox had a publicist.
Wow.
And it's like everyone has a comment. It's like, no. It should be like my picture editor from the network needs to be next to me, and he needs to be the filter of all the comments, because sometimes the comments are the opposite. Like,
right,
she was doing, this is whenever the Martin Lawrence show was, over 20 years ago, she dropped the strap of her overalls. And that was sort of a hip hop look. And people would keep walking up to me and go, the strap's off. The strap's off. You need to button the strap. I'm like, no, really, this is a look. This is what she wants to do. It's sort of a, it's sort of a new look.
Tisha Campbell, that's her name.
Tisha Campbell. Yeah. It's so she had taken the strap down on her overalls, and had a tight T-shirt underneath, and she was totally sexy. And every publicist kept walking up to me as if a hair was out of place. It was like, she needs to put the strap on. I'm like, no, really, this is a style. We are going for it. Like, So I made sure we had a couple with the strap on, but it's like, it's better when one person directs all of those comments and you're not dealing with 6 cooks.
I can't imagine. And that's where it comes in. A lot of I think, new and beginning photographers in any industry, part of the job or the gig is understanding f-stop, shutter speeds, ISO, composition, creating the story on the frame. But then, and correct me if I'm wrong, the other side of it is you have to be the MC, the master of ceremonies on set and making those decisions. You're the CEO for the time when you're shooting, because you're the one that's ultimately responsible for the image that gets recorded. How do you build that skill set, right? Because some people are just shy and wallflowers, and how do you build the skill set to manage all those people?
Totally. I mean, you are the director, and if the shot looks like crap, you're the one responsible. No one is going to blame anyone else. No one is going to blame anyone else. No one is going to, no one's going to like cover your ass. It's like, so I mean, as a younger photographer, I probably didn't do it as deftly. I probably took the comments as an assault to my ego. But
I'm an artiste. How dare you give me input on my work?
Well, how dare us? Then we're not going to hire you again. So there.
Exactly.
So there.
How dare I sign this check?
So I think you just learn to do it. You just learn to. You just learn to be patient, talk to everyone as a human being, and just, you have to manage them all.
It's time, right? It's like the whole 10,000 hours thing. I forget who said it. Probably a bunch of people said this, but we were talking about the idea of how long does it take to become a good photographer. And they were saying that just think of your shutter finger, and it is full of 10,000 bad photographs, and the only way to get them out of there is to press the button. You know? Uh-oh, I lost your video.
Uh-oh, hang on. I hit a button.
Oh, there we go. Button. There we go. Yeah, the only way to get them out of there is to press the button.
I've never heard of that, but that's very funny.
It's great, right? It works. It works. Yeah, then 10,001, they start getting good.
It is good.
So I want to wrap this up and talk a little bit about. I know you have some projects coming up. Tell me about what's on the slate for Michael Grecco.
I'm working on a documentary series about photographers. I can't tell you anymore. But we're just closing production this week of my new book called Punk, Post-Punk, and New Wave, Backstage, On Stage, Backstage, and In Your Face. It's a collection of my late 70s to, I gave away my.
Too late. It's out there now.
It's a collection of my work from the late 70s to the late 70s to the late 80s of punk rock and new wave musicians, backstage, on stage, and in your face.
What are some names? I want to hear some names. Some of the different bands that you shot.
Talking Heads, Billy Idol, B-52s.
Wow. Rebel Yell.
I tell some stories in the book. I was friends with Billy. So, oh my God, the Dead Kennedys and the Cramps and Adam Ant and,
Don't drink, don't smoke. What do you do, right?
All right, you were a rocker.
Dude, I love that. Billy Idol was the man. Remember that? Yeah. That was awesome. So, is this book shots of them behind the scenes, or are you in any of the shots?
There's two pictures of me in the book. One with my introduction and one as a page break to I think the Thayer Street Loft section, me at a New Year's Eve party or Halloween party. So I think a New Year's Eve party. So but yes, there's a couple of pictures of me in the book.
There's Where's Waldo in there?
Yeah, it's kind of obvious, but
when is that coming? When's it coming out?
October of this year.
Okay, well, you have to come back on. We have to talk about that once it's published. All right, I want to end this, and you're one of the first interviews in this new podcast. So I want to set a tradition and end this with kind of a quirky story. And I'm sure you have a million of them. So tell me one of the more interesting stories that has happened in your photographic career that people might find kind of interesting.
Other than Tisha Campbell dropping.
Other than Tisha Campbell, yeah, you got to come up with a new one, man. Yeah.
All right, I was shooting Carmen Electra for Entertainment Weekly, and she had just started in Baywatch. I just pull one out of my behind.
Go ahead.
She had just started Baywatch, and I had her in a bikini, and we had a fake shower going with blow up sharks in it, and we wrapped her in a shower curtain so it wasn't too risque. And she said, well, why don't I just take off my clothes? And I thought, okay.
Absolutely not. That would be inappropriate.
No. So her publicist walks in, and her big publicist. And we actually hadn't started shooting a thing. The publicist was late. But just as we were starting to shoot, we'd done our Polaroids and everything else. She's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. And that's all we heard.
That is awesome. I love that, man. I love that. All right. So if people want to connect with you, they want to see your work, if an art director or someone is watching this and they want to commission you to do some work, how do they get in contact with you?
MichaelGrecco.com, and Grecco's with 2 C's, Grecco.
Awesome. Awesome. Michael Grecco, always a pleasure chatting with you, man. And once again, my apologies for mistaking you as a waiter. Next time I see you, I think we're going to make it a running gag. Whenever I see you, I'm going to bring you a fork.
That's pretty funny. And that would be pretty funny. Or
it'll be a Tiffany's fork. It'll be a Tiffany's fork.
I'll bring you a fork. Does Tiffany's make forks?
Yes, they do. They make spoons and forks and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, man.
Yeah, not whole sets, just little gifts.
Okay.
So cool, man. All right. Well, you stay safe down there, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care, Frederick.
This episode was made possible by our friends at Fujifilm. Make images, share stories, and experience moments at the speed of life with Fujifilm. Thank you for staying home with us.